Shalom, Israel. Brother Reggie Jr. here. So today, guys, I'm going to be doing Genesis chapter 47 and 48. And if you guys remember, in my previous lesson, I told y'all that I would be grouping up these last few chapters of Genesis just for the sake of getting through the book. Because I know this Genesis series has been dragging on a lot. And in fact, after we're done with Genesis, we're going to move on to the book of Exodus. But instead of doing single chapter lessons like I did in Genesis, I'm going to go ahead and group a lot of the chapters together. So I might do chapters 1 through 3 first, and then 4 through 6. You know what I mean? Just for the sake of getting through Exodus, because I will admit this whole Genesis series has dragged on quite a bit. So I'll make sure that it won't end the same way with Exodus. We'll get through Exodus in a timely manner. Now, with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and read Genesis chapter 47 and 48. So Genesis chapter 47, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 6 first, and it says, Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brethren and their flocks and their herds and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan. And behold, they are in the land of Goshen. Now, we're going to find out an interesting fact about the land of Goshen in verse 6, but stay with me. Verse 2. And he took some of his brethren, so he didn't take all his brethren, just some, how many? Even 5, and presented them unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto his 5, what, brethren? What is your occupation? Meaning, what is your job? What do you do? And they said unto Pharaoh, Thy servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. 4. They said more unto Pharaoh, For to sojourn in this land are we come. For thy servants have no pasture for their flocks, meaning we ain't got no grass for our flocks or even their cattle. No grass. Why? Because when the Lord withholds that rain, all of that lush, green, thick grass that you have, it turns into powder or dust, as we call it. And it says, they said, For the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. So that famine was definitely hitting hard in the land of Canaan, because I don't know if you guys remember, but those people in the land of Canaan was real wicked before the Lord. They did a lot of evil stuff. And later when Israel would come to the land of Canaan, he tells them the things that those Canaanites did that got them kicked out the land. And they did some heinous stuff. And the Lord was like, hey, Israel, don't do that. Because you do what them Canaanites did, you going to be out the land just like them Canaanites. And are we out the land? Absolutely. I'm right here dwelling in America. All right. Now, we're going to go ahead and keep going. Verse 5. And it says, And Pharaoh spake unto Joseph, saying, Thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. And we know all of this is of God, because the Lord has to fulfill something, as I spoke of, like I spoke of in the previous lesson. He has to fulfill something that he told Abraham would happen to all of his children. So that's why, Jacob and all of his household, they had to make their migration over there to the land of Egypt. But anyway, verse 6, and it says, The land of Egypt is before thee. So this is what Pharaoh's telling Joseph, his right-hand man. In the best of the land, make thy father and brethren to dwell. And what's the best land? In the land of Goshen, let them dwell. And I'll be completely honest, guys. I had no idea that the land of Goshen was the best of the land of Egypt. Now, of course it didn't turn out that way. It's a moth in my room. Darn moth got in the house. I crushed it though. It's all good. But I had no idea that the land of Goshen was one of the best parts of the land of Egypt. That absolutely blew my mind. Like, I'd never seen that before, because in my mind I thought Goshen was like this run down, beat up ghetto type place, but it wasn't at all. I just thought I would mention it. And it says, let me read it again. The land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land, make thy father and brethren to dwell. In the land of Goshen, let them dwell. And if thou knowest any man of activity among you, meaning any diligent men who know how to get stuff done, then make them rulers over my cattle. Why? Because if you get a diligent man to rule over Pharaoh's cattle, guess what? Pharaoh's going to get even more cattle. All right. Now, basically the Laban effect. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and read verses 7 through 10. And it says, "And Joseph brought in Jacob, his father, and set him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, How old art thou?" So Pharaoh wanted to know, how old are you, Jacob? Verse 9, "And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. So at this time, Jacob is 130 years old. And he says this about his life. He sums up his life in this. He says, "Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been." And he says few because he knows he's getting ready to die soon. But he says, "Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage." Because I believe Abraham lived to be 175 and Isaac lived to be like 180. But Jacob is not going to see anywhere near those numbers. But it's funny that Jacob said, evil have the days of the years of his life being. Why? Because of the stuff he went through with Esau, the stuff he went through with Laban, and then the stuff he went through with at Shechem with his sons Simeon and Levi slaying all the men. And then later in his life, Joseph was presumed dead. So that's why Jacob said, man, evil have the days of my life been. So his life was nothing like Abraham and Isaac. God was still with him, but Jacob had a very troubled life, much like us, the children of Jacob or the children of Israel. We have troubled days. Like all of the days of our lives right now are troubled. Why? Because we sitting up here in captivity. Even the righteous, as much as we keep God's commandments, we got faith in Christ, we still going through pure hell in this captivity. All of us are. We getting it, boy. We getting it. Okay. And verse 10 it says, "And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh." But it was funny because he said few are the days of his life. But that's because, something the Lord said back in Genesis 6. Because the Lord had enough of mankind. So he pronounced something. Genesis chapter 6 and 3. This is post-flood. He says, "And the Lord said," this was going to happen post-flood. So he says, "And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man," meaning I'm not going to always be dealing with man's mess. Okay? "For that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years." So that right there, the Lord basically told mankind that, listen, y'all age range is going to be around 120 years. Y'all ain't doing none of that foolishness and living 500, 600, 700, 800, 900 years old. He's like, absolutely not. Because when man know they have a long time to live, that's when they're going to do the most evil. Because they figure, man, I got all this time. So what I'm going to do is I know I'm going to be living for 900 years. So I'm going to do evil all the way up to about 850 years, and then I'm going to start trying to do right, because I know my time of death getting ready to come. Lord said, oh, heck no, I'm cutting y'all lifespan down. Why? Why did he cut man's lifespan down? I know I'm getting off on another subject, but he did it because with us having short lifespans, living to 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, we're blessed to even see 100. He knows that provokes a sense of urgency, because when you know you don't have that long to live, it's like the whole saying, what would you do right now if you found out you only had 3 days to live? That's pretty much what the Lord did to man. I'm going to give y'all a short lifespan, so that way you will live your life right. Or that's what he at least intended. But man's still doing evil. Man ain't changed a bit. But anyway, let's go ahead and go back to Genesis 47, y'all. Sorry for going off on another topic. But let's go ahead and read verses 11 and 12. And it says, and Joseph placed his father and his brethren and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. So we know the land of Ramses is also known as the land of Goshen. It was the best of the land of Egypt. All right. And it says, and Joseph nourished his father and his brethren and all his father's household with bread according to their families. And was it really Joseph that nourished the household? No, it was God. But the Lord was just using Joseph. Joseph was nothing more than a vessel, such as we. We're nothing more than vessels. That's it. Now I'm going to go ahead and read verses 13 through 17. And it says, and there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. So there was no food in the land of Canaan, except, not land of Canaan, but in the land of Egypt, except that which Joseph saved up. And the land of Canaan definitely didn't have no food. Them wicked suckers, man, they were super wicked, man. But it said they fainted by the reason of the famine. And yes, like I told y'all in previous lessons, look, even though some of these people came to Egypt to get food and stuff, a lot of people died from this famine. Because it's during judgments like this that the Most High zero in and get certain people. I'm going to get his behind. That's why I fear the Lord right there. Because, boy, when he start handing out that judgment, you ain't been doing what was right. He going to get you. He is going to get you. It ain't going to be nowhere to hide. Verse 14. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan. So naturally, Egypt has become very prosperous, very wealthy for the corn which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house, because ultimately anything he's collecting is ultimately still Pharaoh's. Because remember, this is not Joseph's land or anything. This is all the Egyptian stuff. 15. And it says, and when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. Because sometimes something can get so bad into a country where the money doesn't even matter. Money becomes obsolete. Because there can be certain situations and conditions that can happen in a country where money no longer means anything, right? So if there's some kind of, let's just say, right, all of the food in all of the stores is now gone. Supply chain crisis to the absolute extreme, to where there's no food coming in or out. Okay, so like a self-made siege or man-made siege or something like that. You think people gonna care about money in that situation? What good is your money gonna do when you go to the store? Ain't nothing on the shelf. So guess what? That's gonna go out the window. And guess what? Everybody's gonna have to resort to barter. Look, I'll give you this loaf of bread for 2 cans of corn. See how that worked? But, you know, people don't think about it. They think money, everything. It's not. Now, let's go ahead, guys, and go back to Genesis 47 and verse 16. And it says, and Joseph said, give your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle if money fail. Meaning, hey, you ain't got no more money or whatever like that. You all spent that and all that. Oh, and that makes sense too why the money failed. Because remember, agriculture was the way of life back in the ancient times. But when there's a famine, you have no crops. So there's no one working for you, and you can't work for nobody because there's nothing to work on. The land is dust. It's powder. So therefore, guess what? Ain't gonna be no money flowing. So guess what? That's the end of the money train. So now you have to resort to barter, as we see right here. So Joseph like, hey, trade me your cattle and I'll give you some corn. 17. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph. And Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses and for flocks and for the cattle of the herds and for the asses. And he fed them with the bread for all their cattle for that year. So it lets you know too that the leadership of Egypt, which the highest being Pharaoh, that lets you know, man, during these 7 years of famine, they wax extremely rich and extremely wealthy. Now the people, that's a different story, but we can definitely say that the leadership waxed extremely wealthy, extremely rich. 18. And it says, when that year was ended, they came unto him the second year and said unto him, we will hide it not from my Lord, how that our money is spent. My Lord also have our herds of cattle, meaning we ain't even got no more cattle left to give. There is not aught left in the sight of my Lord, but our bodies and our lands, meaning we ain't got nothing left to give but our bodies and our land. That's how far the Lord beat these people down, to where they didn't have nothing left. And that show you, man, the Lord knows how to humble man. See, man act like they don't need God. I don't need God. What I need God for? I got this position. I got this money, this house. I got my wife. What I need all of that for? But this God of Israel will bring you to your knees. And I'm going to warn you, children of Israel. I watch you all over social media. I watch you on World Star and all that, just to look at your behavior. And I want to let you know, how long do y'all think God is going to let y'all go on with this bad behavior before he checks you? Because the Lord is going to check you, and he is going to split y'all head to the white meat. I want to let y'all know that. Okay? So y'all have fun right now. Act like, ignore the word of God. Act like you don't hear it. Y'all showing out, but I'm telling you, God got this rod for y'all, and it's coming. We all feel it, and it's only a matter of time. So for those who doing good, continue to do good. For those doing evil, continue to do evil, because the Lord is going to reward everybody for their works. Okay? Anyway, verse 19. And it says, wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh. So they're willing to give themselves to be servants just so they can eat. And that shows you right there, man. That's why you want to save your money. Now I know this is different, because this is the divine judgment of God, but that's why you always want to save your money. You always want to store food, water, so that way when something happens, you don't have to degrade yourself or sin to get what you need, right? That's why the Lord teaches us to have faith, but he also teaches us to be intelligent, right? Don't be an idiot, guys. Okay, verse 19. It says, they said, we in our land will be servants unto Pharaoh. It says, and give us seed, that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. So, but we can see the Lord was putting it on man, putting it on him. So the Lord know how to make the party stop real quick, because you know how man like to do. Yeah, we won't hear the voice of God. We won't care nothing about what he said. Yeah. Ooh, boy, that beat jumping. But when he's sending that famine, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? People don't think about that. Just like in Florida, they up there. Yeah. Because Florida, I'm gonna let y'all know, Florida's terrible. All right? Don't be fooled by the image that they portray on TV and stuff. Florida is horrible. They doing all that. Yeah, Sunshine State. Lord said, man, bring this category 4 hurricane. Tore Florida to pieces. Fort Myers absolutely wiped off of Florida. But they gonna keep hiding it on TV. But the Lord was not playing at all. And it's just like, when stuff like that happens, people really understand what matters and what doesn't matter. People come to understand that real quick. These cars I got don't matter. This house I got don't matter. The only thing they care about is saving their life. They realize, man, all of this stuff I was chasing, that stuff don't matter. It sure don't. Not when God bring that calamity on your head. So now, anyway, guys, let's get back to it. Verse 22. Actually, verse 20, and it says, and Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field, because the famine, what? Because the famine prevailed over them. Meaning they would have never thought to have done this if that famine hadn't prevailed over them. In other words, that poverty, that stomach prevailed over them. That's why they sold it. Why? Because you realize, look, that stuff don't matter. I want to live. I don't want to die. So if I got to sell my land, if I got to become a servant, hey, I got to do what I have to do. And look what it said about their lands. It says, so the land became what? Pharaoh's. 21. And it says, as for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt, even to the other end thereof. 22. Only the land of the priests bought he not, for the priests had a portion assigned them of Pharaoh, and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them, a lot like how the Levites were with God. Okay, their portion was of God. Wherefore they sold not their land. So it's funny how even Pharaoh, he had priests, but he made sure his priests was separate. He made sure there was a difference. Okay, Israel don't make no difference, but see how Pharaoh made a difference? That's what God did with the Levites. He made a difference. There's going to be a difference when it comes to the Levites and the sons of Aaron. Okay. Verse 23. Then Joseph said Then Joseph said unto the people, behold, I have bought you this day in your land for Pharaoh. Lo, here is seed for you, and ye shall sow the land. 24. And it shall come to pass in the increase that ye shall give the fifth part unto Pharaoh. So he pretty much gave them seed. He like, listen, when the famine is over and stuff like that, and you begin to sow with the seed that I give you, he says, what? Ye shall give the fifth part of what you have, and 4 parts shall be your own, for seed of the field, for your food, and for them of your households, and for food for your little ones. Okay, so a 5th part of whatever they grew, it belonged to Pharaoh. Okay, 25. Naturally, why? Because that's Pharaoh's stuff. It's his land now. It no longer belonged to the people. 25. And it says, and they said, thou hast saved our lives. Let us find grace in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servant. So they admitted to Joseph. They said, Joseph, man, you saved our life. You saved our beef. I wanted to say bacon, but we won't eat unclean. You saved our beef. All right. In verse 26, and it says, and Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt unto this day, that Pharaoh should have the 5th part, except the land of the priests only, which became not Pharaoh's. 27. And it says, and Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions therein, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. So it lets you know. So it's telling you right here in verse 27 that the house of Israel, man, the 12 tribes, they begin to multiply exceedingly. And that's going to lead right into the book of Exodus. It's kind of crazy how you read the Bible. It's almost like it goes back in time, then it goes back forward in time. So you have to be aware of what's going on. Okay, verse 28. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So, Jacob was 130 years, and it's 30 years old. And right here it says he dwelt in Egypt for 17 years. So that means he got to enjoy his son Jacob, who he hadn't seen in decades. he got to enjoy him for 17 years, which would make Jacob 147 years old. And it says, so the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. Well, I'm going to just say old, okay? And we're going to find out that this is the amount of grace that the Lord allotted to Jacob, 147 years old, 29. And it says, and the time drew nigh that Israel must die. And he called his son Joseph and said unto him, if now I have found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray thee. So this is like an oath taking place. So he says, bury me, I pray thee. Bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt. So he said, hey, look, Joseph, don't bury me in Egypt. 30. He says, but I will lie with my fathers, and thou shalt carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burying place. And he said, I will do as thou hast said, bury him where? In the cave of Machpelah. That's what he's talking about. And why was burial like so important back in the ancient times? You know, Israel went to die in the land of, you know, Israel and stuff like that, buried with their fathers, different stuff. It's because they understood the resurrection. See, we don't care today. Oh man, I don't care. Shoot, they'll put me in that grave over there when I'm dead. Or they say, yeah, just cremate me and put me on the top shelf. They had knowledge and they understood the resurrection that would come by way of Christ. That's why for them it was so serious. But today, you know, we've lost knowledge of a lot of things, so we don't really care or consider. So a lot of us, but you know, unfortunately, a lot of us, we don't have no choice. A lot of us are going to die in the land of our enemies, which, you know, I feel is a curse. You know, so it is what it is. There, 31, it says, and he said unto me, swear unto me. And he sware unto him. And Israel bowed himself upon the bed's head. So he swore unto his dad, hey daddy, I'm not going to bury you in Egypt. I'll promise to bury you in the land of Canaan, in the cave of Machpelah, where Abraham and Isaac is buried. So let's just go see it real quick, just in case any of you guys forgot where his fathers was buried at, where he was going to get buried at. So Genesis 25, and I'm going to read verses 8 through 10, and it says, then Abraham gave up the ghost, meaning he died, and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, just like the Lord told him he would have. In his and he was gathered to his people, verse 9, and his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him what? In the cave of Machpelah. So that's where Jacob was going to be buried, in the field of Ephraim, the son of Zoar the Hittite, which is before Mamre, and the field which Abraham purchased of the sons of Heth, there was Abraham buried, and Sarah his wife. Yep. So that's where Abraham and Sarah was buried, right there in the cave of Machpelah, and that is where Jacob would be buried, as we're going to find out. So now, guys, that was the end of Genesis 47. I thoroughly enjoyed that chapter, guys, and now it is time for us to move on to Genesis chapter 48. And after this chapter, we will be done with this two-part lesson. So Genesis chapter 48, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 4. And it says, and it came to pass after these things that one told Joseph, behold, thy father is sick. And he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay. And when it says his father's sick, we know we're not talking about a cold, you blowing your nose. And that ain't what it's talking about. It's talking about your ticker is finally running out. Okay. That old age is finally crept up to you. Because remember, guys, dying is a sickness. Like right now, I'm sick, you're sick, everybody's sick. And what is that sickness called? That sickness is called death. every day we are one step closer to the grave. All of us, whether we try to pretend we are or not, you one step closer every day. Verse 2. So Joseph, took his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. We know Manasseh was the oldest, and we know Ephraim is the youngest. So naturally, before his dad dies, he wants to give the blessing of the firstborn to Manasseh and also bless his youngest son Ephraim. Verse 2, and it says, and one told Jacob and said, behold, thy son Joseph cometh unto thee. And Israel strengthened himself and sat up upon the bed. So he got up for his son, so he could present himself in a nice way to his son. All right, verse 3. And Jacob said unto Joseph, God Almighty appeared unto me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said unto me, behold, I will make thee fruitful and multiply thee, and I will make thee a multitude of people, and will give this land to thy seed after thee for an everlasting possession. Okay, let's go and see where the Lord told Jacob that. Let's go ahead and go to Genesis 28, because we know that the Lord told that to Abraham and Isaac, but he also told, that to Jacob. So Genesis 28, and I'm going to read verses 12 and 13, and it says, and he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth. So Jacob's ladder, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. 13. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. 19. And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city was called Luz at the first. So we see that is where the Lord made that promise to Jacob. So now let's go ahead and go back to Genesis 48, and we're going to continue reading verses 5 through 10. And it says, and now thy two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, because Ephraim and Manasseh, they represent they are the two representatives for the tribe of Joseph. It says, so now thy two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto thee in the land of Egypt, before I came unto thee into Egypt, are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. So in other words, they're not just going to be, my grandchildren. No, them two are going to count as progenitors of the tribes of Israel. In other words, they're going to be counted as Jacob's sons. So those two, even though, they came out of you, Joseph, they're going to count as progenitors for two of the tribes of Israel, Ephraim and Manasseh, because theoretically it should only be the tribe of Joseph, which it technically is, but it isn't. It should just be the tribe of Joseph and the Josephites. But no, instead, Ephraim and Manasseh was counted as the two sons of Jacob. So they were counted as sons of Jacob. Therefore, two tribes added, Ephraim and Manasseh, which represented Joseph, but they were split into two. It says 6, and thy issue which thou begettest after them shall be thine, and shall be called after the name of their brethren in their inheritance. All right. And as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died by me in the land of Canaan, in the way, when yet there was a little way to come unto Ephraim. And it says, and I buried her there in the way of Ephraim. The same is Bethlehem. Man, verse 8. And Israel beheld Joseph's sons and said, who are these? 9. And Joseph said unto his father, They are my sons, whom God hath given me in this place. And he said, bring them, I pray thee, unto me. He says, and I will bless them. Verse 10. Now the eyes of Israel were dim for age, just like his father Isaac. His eyes was dim for age, so that he could not see. And he brought them near unto him. And, I don't know, this kind of makes me a little sad, just because, you kind of once seen Jacob. He was young, he was full of life, he was strong, and now he's old and his eyes dim, just like Isaac. Isaac was once strong, full of, strength and full of vitality and stuff like that. And then he got old. And so it's a pain to get old, man, but it's going to happen, Lord willing, to all of us. If he allow us to see old age, it's going to happen to all of us. Going to get old, not going to be able to see as well, right? Because that's that death creeping in. Body don't work as good as it used to. So this is just a part of that death transition. And it says, and he brought them near unto him, and he kissed them and embraced them. So Jacob, or Israel, he embraced Ephraim and Manasseh. Verse 11. And Israel said unto Joseph, or Jacob, I had not thought to see thy face. So he like, son, I didn't think I was ever going to see your face again. And lo, God have showed me also thy seed. Not only did the Lord allow me to see your face again, I also got to see my grandchildren. And it says, verse 12, and Joseph brought them out from between his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand, and toward Israel's left hand, Manasseh. Okay, let me read that again. That made no sense at all. 13. Okay. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, because naturally he wanted Jacob to place his right hand for the birthright blessing on Manasseh. That's why he put Manasseh in his left hand toward Jacob's right hand, to give him that firstborn blessing. Verse 14. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it upon Ephraim's head. So that right hand that was supposed to go right in front of him on top of Manasseh's head, he actually switched it across. And I'm actually using my right hand, but the camera's flipped, so it looked like I'm using my left hand. But in other words, he took his right hand, and instead of just putting it right in front, right on Manasseh's head, he crossed it over and put it on Ephraim's head. Okay? And it says, who was the younger? So Ephraim was the younger, so he put that right hand on Ephraim's head. In his left hand, he put upon Manasseh's head, guiding his hand wittingly. For Manasseh was the firstborn. And wittingly mean Jacob knew what he was doing. He wasn't stupid. He knew what he was doing. Yep. He knew exactly what he was doing. Why? Because this was all a part of the Lord's plan. 15. And he blessed Joseph and said, God, before whom my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, did walk, the God which fed me all my life long until this day. See, so Jacob knew it wasn't him that was providing for himself. He knew it was God taking care of him. 16. It says, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads. So it makes you wonder, how did Jacob have knowledge of this? It says, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, which means he was aware of something. So that lets you know Jacob was aware of something. And let's see what that thing is that he was aware of. Let's go ahead and go to Psalms 34, and I'm going to read verse 7. What was you aware of, Jacob? The angel of the Lord encampeth around about them that what fear him, and deliver them. So he had knowledge of that. When you follow the Most High, the Lord sent his angels to protect you round about. Jacob had understanding of this. So all of this stuff, these things were happening long before the children of Israel became a nation. Long before children of Israel. That same angel was with Abraham. That same angel was, went back Noah, Arphaxad, Shem, Adam. Angels always been there protecting the righteous. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and go to let me see. I don't want to go there. We'll go to that later. So let's go ahead and go back to Genesis 48. Let me see where I was, y'all. I think I was on verse. Now I'm on verse 15. It says, and he blessed Joseph and said, God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac did walk, the God which fed me all my life long unto this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named on them. So let these two become my actual sons, which would lead them into being two extra tribes. And the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. So we see that Ephraim and Manasseh, they would become a great multitude. These two tribes, I believe, were larger than any of the tribes of Israel. But it's going to go even a step further. We just got to keep reading verse 17. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. And he held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head onto Manasseh's head. 18. And Joseph said unto his father, not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head, meaning put your head on the Manasseh's head, because he's the firstborn. 19. And his father refused. Why? Because the Lord was guiding him. It said his father refused and said, I know it, my son. I know it. He said, I know, Jacob. Don't worry, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Meaning Manasseh, he gonna become a great people. He gonna become a people, and he gonna be great. But he says this, but truly his younger brother shall become greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. And that right there, brothers and sisters, that was said about Ephraim, his seed shall become a multitude of nations. You have to be careful in the Bible sometimes, right? Especially in the New Testament, when it talks about nations. Sometimes it's talking about the heathen nations, but sometimes it's talking about Ephraim, which is a representative or the leading tribe of the 10 tribes. Okay. So sometimes when it says multitude nations, sometimes it's not talking about the heathen nations. Okay. You got to be able to make that difference. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to Genesis 17. And I went over this back when I did Genesis 17. You can go back and look at the video. So Genesis 17, 4 through 6, it says, as for me, behold, my covenant is with thee. So he's telling Abraham. I know it say Abram, but I'm going to go ahead and say Abraham. He says, my covenant. Wait, let me see. Where was I? I got confused. I had ended up looking at another scripture to show you how short my attention span is. But he said, as for me, behold, my covenant is with thee. Okay? It's with you, Abraham, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. And what nations is he talking about? He's talking about the tribes of Israel. Because all of them tribes, those are nations. It's not just like, it's not Asher, Gad, Simeon, Reuben, Levi, all that, Issachar, all that, Judah, Levi, It's more than just that. Each of those tribes, y'all, are literally a nation. Do you know how big a single tribe was? No, them 12 sons, they became their own great nations. They were all brothers, of course, absolutely. But what? They were still their own separate nation in a way. But they were all brothers. But that's why it says what? Many nations. It's about the 12 tribes. And we seem to have a very short memory, or I don't know what's wrong with us. But, back in them times, you stayed within the tribe. Hey, Judah, you stay within the tribe. Levi, stay within the tribe. Mary within the tribe. That's how we do stuff. Why? Because it's like y'all were your own nation. That's how things went down. Things were tribal back in those days. And there are certain parts of the world people still practice that. Even though, let's just say you have 4 tribes, right? Let's just say you have 4 tribes of some nation, right? They all the same people, but they're split up into 4 tribes. Well, each tribe stayed to themselves. They marry among themselves. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm just trying to show y'all that these things, these tribes were kind of like their own nations. That's what I'm trying to get at. Hey, let me keep on reading verse 5. And it says, neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be called Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. And those many nations, y'all, are the 12 tribes of Israel. 6. And I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations what? Of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. So he says, I will make nations of these. Of thee, meaning these are going to be people that physically come out of you. All right. Of your seed. Okay. Which we know Isaac, Jacob, and then an innumerable amount of Israelites. That's what he's talking about. I'm talking about them nation, them tribes. That's what I'm talking about. But anyway, y'all, I don't want to get off into that. I need to go ahead and finish this up. Let's go ahead and go back to Genesis chapter 48. And I'm going to continue reading the rest of this through verse 20. And it says, and he blessed them that day, saying, in thee shall Israel bless, saying, God make thee as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said unto Joseph, behold, I die. So Jacob knew it was finally time. He says, but God shall be with you, and bring you again into the land of your fathers. And Joseph, too, he would end up being buried also in the land of Canaan. But he says, don't worry, Joseph. He said, even though I'm leaving, God going to be with you. And he going to bring you again into the land of your fathers. 22. He says, moreover, I have given to thee one portion above thy brethren, which I took out of the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow. And he didn't actually do it, but he's referring to Simeon and Levi. Okay, he's referring to the land of Shechem. That's what he is referring to. And he says, I'm going to give you that, for your portion. Okay, so that's what he was referring to. But that is it, guys, for Genesis chapter 47 and 48. And I hope you guys got some understanding. And with that, shalom.